excited to have Pixie Bea with me. As everyone knows, I get really excited when I can actually interview someone from family daycare. And Pixie Bea is a family daycare educator. So welcome to PD in your pocket.
Hello.
Pixie, tell me, how long have you been a family daycare educator?
So I've been a family daycare educator for slightly under 2.5 years, but an educator for 17 years. All of that with my diploma, and my family daycare years have been with Inspired Family Daycare, and I love it. It's like I'm getting to be my best educator self. And
oh wow, that's
great. If I leave family daycare, I'm leaving the sector.
Oh no,
I'm staying. But if I'm ever giving up family daycare, it'll be because I'm leaving the sector.
And why do you like it so much? What's so great about it? Like, I know what's great about it.
But you know what's great about it. I love the relationships. I love that it's this slower paced and more natural connection with children. I don't have to get sent off for a break when I'm in the midst of an experience. I don't have to leave the children who I'm their favorite person because it's the end of my shift or because I've got a lunch break. I don't have to have that hard handover multiple times a day. And it's the children are more relaxed. I can better meet their needs, and I get to do more of the really fun stuff. I get to keep pushing my practice without feeling held back or restricted by other people's expectations. We just get to run with it. The children come up with something off the cuff and we run with it. And that's relaxing. I always have the resources I need to hand because they're my resources. And I get to curate all of that myself. So that autonomy and those
one of the bits that I think is one of the fun bits, and that is the point of this topic and why we're interviewing you, is I understand that you go on lots and lots of excursions with your
lots and lots of excursions. So we're out of the house on excursions at least twice a week, sometimes 3 times, sometimes pretty much every day. I'm open 4 days a week. And excursions are just a natural, comfortable part of our practice.
Okay, so let me set the scene. What age groups have you got?
My current youngest is 15 months and my oldest is 5. And well, plus a couple of school-age children that we do the after-school run, and my own children who are 12 and 14. So it's one of those things I love about family daycare is the natural family melding of mixed age groups. So the children are constantly learning from each other and learning from children who are a little bit beyond the normal grouping you get in a centre environment.
Okay, so when you go out on an excursion, you're taking a 15-month-old, say. What's your next age group?
I've got a 2-year-old, a couple 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. It's spread all along it. And
are most of your children like 1 or 2 days, or are they 4 days?
I've got 2 that are 4 days a week, and the others are 2 to 3 days a week.
Right. Okay. So it's
so I've got a couple that are 1 day a week as well, but that was because they already had the relationship with me and needed to knock their time back a little bit. So
sure,
it's a mix all the way across.
Okay, so tell me, where is your favorite place to go on an excursion?
See, this is a tricky question. I think my favorite at the moment is the cork oaks at the Arboretum, because it's got that sort of woodland grove feel to it, and there's a couple of fallen trees that are perfect for children to climb. And we often meet up there with the other educators in my service for little playgroup days. It's cool even in the middle of summer because there's some nice dense shade and trees to climb, and we set up a slack line and I bring along art materials and we just chill. And the children are always so proud of themselves for being able to climb further than they did last time. And they tell their families about it and they drag their families out there. So that's my current.
And how far away? You're in the ACT, yeah?
I'm in the ACT, I'm in Canberra.
And how far away from where you live and work is the Arboretum?
Okay, so that's about a half-hour drive. And to get to that spot in the cork oaks, it has about an extra 10 to 15 minute toddle to get to our favourite base.
Okay, now I happen to know what an arboretum is because I live in a suburb with an arboretum, but a lot of people have probably never heard that word. So the way I describe it to people is a living tree museum. Is that how you describe it?
It's almost a zoo for trees because they're all clustered. It's a garden for where they're sort of illustrating all the different types of trees. And we've got, whilst most of the trees at the Canberra one are quite young because they've only been planted since the bushfires in 2003, there's still some of the established trees. The cork oaks themselves are more than 100 years old, and you can see where the cork's been harvested from the trunks. And so there's big trees and small trees, and a children's garden and lots of community type spaces.
Okay, well, that sounds like a wonderful place.
There's a reason why it's one of my favorites.
Yep, and I love the idea of you taking a slack line. There. Would we be able to get a photo of some of your children in that space at some stage?
See if I can send it. I'll check in for permissions, but
that'd be great.
I can edit them to hide faces if I need to.
Why are excursions, as someone that's worked in both centre-based and now in family daycare, why are excursions so important to you as a family daycare educator?
So for me, the excursions are a chance to, doing family daycare, it's really easy to feel trapped and sort of stuck at home. And I chafe at that. And when I was in centre-based care, I was the outdoor educator. So I've always been drawn to being outdoors. But for connection, for me, the getting out on excursions is, it's not having the sound bouncing back in on us from the walls. It's the children having a bit more space. It's the children are coming to Pixie's place and playing with Pixie's resources. But if we all go out to an excursion space, we're all playing with a place it belongs to all of us. It belongs to our community. And because we're going to these places consistently, it also becomes a connection to country and a sense of ownership and belonging to country, because country owns us more than we own country. And that's by having those relationships and living it and breathing it and loving it, they're more driven to look after it later. And it's something they share with the community, and there's so much good in it. And I just, being outside, I'm at peace. And that
sounds good.
I relax and the children relax, and we're just be in.
And we know that like scientifically, it is true that being in nature helps us both form new neural pathways in our brain, but it does help slow down our breathing, slow down
a natural calming element to it, especially if you're going somewhere with a trickle of water, or some of the other places we go to have creeks and mud hills and the lake. There's a little beach at the lake in the middle of Canberra that we'll take the children out to.
Your regulator doesn't freak about you?
The regulator doesn't freak out about that, because we do our risk assessments and we talk with our mentors and we go through the legislation really, really carefully. And the children can explore water without it being, no, they might drown. No, we're watching them. We're there and we're in the water with them half the time.
I think that you'd find in New South Wales that a large majority of services don't let their educators go anywhere near water on an excursion.
Inspired is in New South Wales and Victoria and Queensland, as well as the ACT, and all of our educators get out to those sorts of spaces with the support of our service and with approval from, we've checked in with the legislature, with regulations and with the regulatory authorities to make sure that we're not missing anything. And sometimes it means rewriting our risk assessments, but
That sounds wonderful. Okay, look, we'll get
worthy.
on to assessments a bit later because that's the boring part of an excursion.
It's also a fleeting part because you do it once and it's done.
Yeah.
And then you get all the excursion bits, and that's fun and it more than pays for itself. Anyway.
So one of the topic that we're doing this interview as part of, it's not just about excursions, it's about connecting children to community, because I think that increasingly we're putting children in places where they're cared for. And when I'm used to stay at home with the children were a lot more connected to the community. They'd talk to the postie, they'd talk to the milkman, etc.
They'd come along to the grocery to do the groceries.
Whereas I think children now kind of exist in these locked environments, then in cars, then in a home environment. Yeah. So how does your community react to seeing children in the wild?
Okay, so even this week we were out at the Botanic Gardens with our little playgroup, and we saw multiple other people, parents with children who were also enjoying the Botanic Gardens, would notice us and notice the toddlers meandering around, climbing on stuff, poking the water, sitting in the water, dropping things in the water, running, weaving their way between bushes and things. They'd smile. Every single person that went past would see what we were doing and smile. And some of them sat nearby for quite a while and watched us. And you could see that joy in children being joyous. And I've had times when I've encountered families out when we're out and about, and I mean, it's pretty obvious that I'm a family daycare educator rather than a parent, because I've got my cart, which has my excursion backpack, and I have a bag with all the lunch boxes and the picnic rug, and I'm a bit more stocked up than I'd normally be going as just a parent. I don't want to minimize just a parent because it's not a just. But there's times when, the mozzies are a bit of a pain here. Do you want someone who want to borrow my insect repellent because I've got some in my kit? Or that child's just had a fall. They're not one of my children, but hey, I've got a first aid kit. Here's some ice pack. Let's get that on there to calmly tend to the child while keeping half an eye on the ones that I'm responsible for. And they really appreciate the preparedness, that willingness to connect with them and to support people in my community whilst I'm doing something I love. And they can just see.
Do the children have a connection with those other people? Like, not just randoms.
They'll often strike up play. They'll often strike up play with whatever children we encounter. We don't tend to go to places that are crowded at the moment with COVID challenges, but the children just naturally fall into play with each other, like children do anywhere.
And what about with other adults, like the shopkeepers?
When we're, oh my goodness, they have to wave to the rubbish truck drivers. If I could learn my local rubbish truck driver names, I absolutely would. But they'll often strike up conversations with people that we see regularly. The last couple of years, it's been harder to have those sorts of excursions because we've been having to avoid going to indoor places with what the regulations have been doing with their advice. But consistently going to the bakery or things like that, they start to get to know places and people and connect and belong to it.
Yeah, sure. And do you, I know some educators, when they take their children out, they'll put them all in a red t-shirt or something. No, nope. You don't. No, nope.
I know which children are mine. I know which children are mine. I know their hats because they're their regular hats. I know these children. And that's one of the core parts of being a family daycare educator is I've got a small group and I know them all really, really personally.
Yeah.
I mean, you know them when you're in a centre-based environment too, but you're doing a lot more behaviour management and the constant on alert.
That's it.
Yeah, they don't need uniforms. They don't need fluoro jackets. They're just being children.
So what is in your kit?
Okay. So the things that I have to have, I've got my nappy change stuff and the first aid kit, which has to meet the list, and a change of clothes, which I try and keep really minimal. I'm one of these over-prepared people.
That's good.
It's got the contact detail, paper copy of contact details for the children and the parents, and there's a list of requirements.
Your phone doesn't work.
Just in case the phone dies. I've also got a battery pack for my phone in there, and that's part of my over-preparedness. The extra stuff it includes a multi-tool, because then I've got a blade, scissors, pen, pins, whatever I need. I've got cables and note paper, and I've often got a mini art kit, and it evolves according to what the children are into. And
zip line sometimes.
There's a couple of things that I've added over time that I particularly love, like hanging from my excursion backpack is so it started with doing the school run on foot, and I had a couple of rings on my belt, and the children would sort of argue over who was getting to hold the rings on my hips, and they'd all just be kind of crowded in around me, and it was just a little bit too claustrophobic for me. So I got some bright bangles and stuck them on a stretchy bit of rainbow elastic and hooked that onto my excursion pack. So now they hold a rainbow ring. I've since attached those to the cart as well as the excursion backpack, and they know that they hold the rainbow ring, and that's how we get around when I need them close by.
And when you say your excursion cart, talk to me about that. What's that?
Okay, so mine's a beach cart. From using it for the last year or so, I'd aim at getting one with all rubber tires rather than the plastic with a strip of rubber on it, because the wheels are a bit annoying and they're starting to crack a bit. But it's a fold-up cart, so it fits in the back of my car, and I unfold it and I can load in. I could fit 4 children in there if I really had to. I have hauled it with 2 toddlers and 3 toddlers. Yeah, I've got photos of me hauling it with 3 toddlers and 1 on my back, and preschooler toddling along the side, sort of thing. It helps carry stuff, so we can. I've got
one of those trolleys as well, and I know what you mean about get the ones with better wheels. I don't know why I bought the Kmart one, but I bought the Kmart one, and the wheels.
I'm going to replace the wheels because I'll work that out, and it'll means it doesn't become junk. I'm a big fan of repairing stuff and puzzling out a way of hodgepodging it together.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. So what, give us an idea of other places that you go on excursions.
Okay, another of my favorites is Black Mountain Peninsula, which is on the shores of Lake Burley Griffin. And so Lake Burley Griffin in Canberra is a manufactured lake. They put in a dam and to fill it up, and it's this very idyllic, pretty place. But Black Mountain Peninsula has a river sand beach and an enclosed children's wading area that is, and it tells you it doesn't get beyond this depth, so that we know that's a pretty safe zone for the children to wade. We check it out before we get there. And so yeah, that gives us some lake, beach, water type play. Another one that's a favourite, it's out of mobile reception. So we actually put in for funding, we applied for a funding grant so we could get a satellite phone for our service, and won the grant. And so we now have a satellite phone that we share use of, and we go down to Woods Reserve. And it's got a creek, it's a campground, so there's a toilet block there. And it's got slopes and steps and bushland and a creek that's generally cold with rocks that they can climb on and wade in the water and drop rocks in the water because it makes a satisfying splash. And so that's another favourite. I do go to playgrounds as well, but I prefer the really wild natural places because there's more room for the children to put their own story into what they're doing. And
do you ever take children like to supermarkets or post offices or those kind of?
The last 2 years has been tricky with COVID, but we've had to avoid the indoor places. But yeah, we walk down to the local shops. We when we're doing the school run, we'd spend a bit of time playing on the school playground that was accessible, because that helps the children familiarized with the school that most of them will be going to.
Yeah,
and that
sure.
builds part of that connection.
Connection to community, yep.
Yeah, local
And
bakeries and things like that.
Worry about safety issues more when you're out and about? Like, you know, I can hear people going, she lets them drop rocks.
Yeah, of course I do. I let
Yeah.
them climb trees, and they're climbing trees so that their feet are higher than my head. But we do the risk assessments and we manage those risks. Yes, there are more uncontrolled risks out there, in that they're spaces that I can't shape the environment. So in my backyard, I can, if there's a spot that's a dangerous fall, I can adjust what soft falls around it, or I can modify it in other ways. Out there, I can't do that. There can be rubbish, there can be broken glass, there can be people walking their dog. I actually feel safer with them out there because the children are better, because they're getting more practice. They're getting better at regulating their own risk assessment skills. I really love being out. The ways we collaborate as educators when we're out on one of our play groups and the children are climbing trees and we're talking with the children with, okay, pause for a moment, how's your body feeling? Are you feeling safe and stable? You feeling good? Okay, where are you going to put your hand next? And we're talking them through it. You look like you're feeling a bit worried. How about we stop and breathe for a moment? And then we're going to, once we're calm, we'll be able to work out how you're going to work out how you're going to get back down again. And no, I'm not going to lift you down, but I will help you find the right spot with your feet and your hands and get your belly on the branch and things like that, so that they can feel strong. And they get better at managing those risks, so the risks become less.
Yep.
And they're challenging themselves and they're more relaxed and they know the rules. They know what's expected of them because they have a few simple rules that they know to follow, and we touch base with them every time we go out, and they remind each other, and it's easier to manage, it's easier to supervise.
And when you say you go out with other educators, how many other educators would you go in a group?
Sometimes it's just one, sometimes it'll be 3 or 4 with whatever children we've got.
Right.
It depends on the day. It depends on who's available. Okay. We have group chats where we say, my crew have asked if we can go out here. Does anyone want to go out there too? And it really, really helps with the isolation that
being
is a really common feature for family daycare educators. And our mentors will meet us out there, and that's their favourite part of the job.
So by mentors, do you mean coordinators?
Coordinators, yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. Yep. So some educators that will be listening this may well have never taken a child on an excursion at all. The child is dropped at their home and picked up from their home, and that's it. Others, you know, may do the school run to pick up other children, but that's about as far as it goes.
Yep.
What would you say, you know, to an educator that is too scared to take children on excursions?
Okay, I know the common advice here would be to just give it a go. But for me, when I was thinking about this, my advice would actually be to find a place where you feel at peace. Find a place somewhere out there that you feel relaxed and that feels a bit curious and content and happy. And if it feels at peace for you, then share that with the children. Because this is a place that feels good in your emotional well-being. This is a place where there's trees or open sky, or maybe it's somewhere that you've taken your own children with to when they were little, or if it's somewhere with some fond memories, or it just looks interesting. And if it sparks that little bit of wonder of, I wonder what the children would do here, or I can see this particular child doing that in that space, give it a try. You can always, your coordinators are there to act as a mentor, as a support person. Put the idea to them, ask for some help, and visit it again, visit it a couple of times if you need to. but go somewhere where you feel at peace, because that's where you'll
I love
relax
that.
most.
Yeah, I love that advice, and I think that's really good advice.
It's also a good idea to sort of seek out a service that is in line with that sort of philosophy if it's something you want to try.
Sure.
I've gotten so much of that with Inside. It's beautiful.
Just talking about the boring stuff, how do you deal with the regulatory requirements?
Okay, so our mentors, coordinators are really on top of what the regulations actually say. If a question comes up, if the regulations change, they pick through it with a fine-tooth comb. They run it past us too, so we're all having input into puzzling out what this stuff means and how we're going to implement it as a service. But yes, there's a series of checkboxes that you need to follow, but they're not insurmountable. And once you get used to managing them, it becomes easy. So we do a risk assessment for every excursion that we're going on. We try and keep to a small collection of regular excursions with intermittent other places that we'll go to, because that's better for forming relationships, and it means you're not doing risk assessments constantly. Those get renewed every 12 months. Families sign permission forms whenever you bring in a new risk assessment for a new location, or every 12 months. And then you just go. So there's checkboxes we do need to follow. With the changes to the rules about transporting children in vehicles, we developed a Google Docs for checking children in and out of the car to make sure that nobody got left in the car, make sure we haven't lost anybody, which sometimes feels tedious and ridiculous, but it's an important thing to protect children, so we make it happen. Yeah. For me, I did up a template risk assessment that we use benefit risk assessment more than just risk assessment, because the benefits are so much more than the risks, and all of the risks are manageable. And that's part of the point of doing a risk assessment, is to work out how you're going to deal with the potential problems that come up. So I did a basic template for myself of going to urban areas, going to bushland areas, and going to a combination of the two. And I use those templates and then tweak it to suit where I'm going. And that simplifies the paperwork process. I send it off to my mentor. They read over it, highlight any bits that I need to think about or adjust, and approve it. Send it off to families, and most of them go, "Yeah, we trust you. Sign it off and go."
Yeah, look, I actually like doing risk assessments myself, because it enables me to go, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen in this scenario?
Yep.
And then once you've thought,
it's a good reflective practice.
You can take it out of your head.
Yep.
Because
you stop worrying about it, because you know how you're going to manage it. What you're going
to do.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but you might get a bit bored with that. So is there any tips or tricks that you'd like to share with other educators about, doing excursions?
So I have two ones that I use with the children. The first is the rainbow rings that I described earlier. They know they've got to hold on to the rainbow rings if we're crossing a road, or if we're in a busy area where I just need to feel like they're staying with me and safe. And the other one is cooey. So cooey, you do that and it really carries. And my children all know that if they hear cooey, they've got to call it back and start coming back towards me. They know that if they've ever lost sight of me, and they don't know, I've rarely lost sight of them, but if they're not sure of where I am, they can call cooey and I'll respond it back, and then they can find me. And if they're getting a bit too far ahead because they're an excited toddler who just wants to run, I do cooey. Sometimes it takes them a few seconds to stop, and then they register it and start running back, and they guide each other on it. But yeah, cooey has been simple and effective, and it just helps tie us together whilst giving them the freedom to just be children doing natural childhood things. Yeah.
That's great. I really hope that people watching this can get as excited as you are about excursions and feel as free as you are about doing them as well, because I think it's really important for children that they become part of our community. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us tonight.
The more you do it, the more fun it gets. And the more you see the best of childhood and the best of the children in your care. They're not at each other's throats when they're outside in the wild. It's the childhood I had, and it's the childhood I want them to have access to that they don't normally.
I want to have a child so you can be their family daycare.
I get that a lot. When we encounter families out there, I often get the question of, so how do I go about signing up? Or do you have any places? I don't. I have a wait list. I've never had to advertise.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed this.